Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest in my constructed video series. This is Brian Kibler with StarCityGames.com, and because Grand Prix Minneapolis is coming up this weekend, I decided to do a little bit of extra modern content this week. We still don't have Journey into Nyx on Magic Online, so I can't do any videos with new standard or draft just yet. So I decided that I'd do a little bit extra modern because that is a format that is unlikely to change quite so much. And I'm still just trying to figure out what deck I'm going to play at the Grand Prix. So as you can see on your screen, I am going to be trying out the green-white Aether Vial deck. This is very similar to the deck that I played at the World Championships, though it is a little bit different. That deck was much more focused on more sort of hate bear style stuff. I had Voice of Resurgence in there. I had Whitleaf Liege in there. So it was a bit more focused on that, whereas this is more focused on some Enter the Battlefield effects. The Blade Splicer Flicker Wisp interaction along with Restoration Angel gives the deck the ability to play sort of a much more instant speed game rather than a kind of overpowered game. Along with Aether Vial, with Flicker Wisp, you can do all kinds of neat tricks like if you have a Vial on 3, your opponent actually can't even effectively play Splinter Twin, because if they Splinter Twin their guy, you can Vial in a Flicker Wisp and get them. So trying that out a little bit. I do still have a couple of Pride Mages. Thalia is a pretty solid, just generally effective card in a lot of matchups in Modern, and Pride Mage as well gives you sort of flexible tools against a lot of decks. But the core of the sort of Arbiter and Mind Sensor plus Ghost Quarter interaction still here. I do have Brimaz. Brimaz is kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I like Brimaz better than just Loxodon Smiter, or perhaps even just a 4th Blade Splicer and a 4th Flicker Wisp. But I'm trying it out. It's been okay so far. Not super impressive, not bad either. So hard to say. It's definitely, I like having something like that, either Smiter or Brimaz, I think, rather than just the Splicer or Flicker Wisp, because the deck is pretty vulnerable to Anger of the Gods, and having 4 toughness creatures in that spot can give you some additional insurance against that. Looking at the sideboard, Mirran Crusader. Mirran Crusader is a card that I've liked a lot. I think is actually kind of underrated. It's particularly powerful against the green-black like rock style decks. Many of them can't ever kill it other than Liliana. And then it's also actually quite powerful against Pod, as particularly with Noble Hierarch and Pride Mage giving you exalted triggers. It can just hit really hard past their Kitchen Finks and Voices and things like that. So it can be very difficult for them to deal with. Rule of Law would be Eidolon of Rhetoric, the new Rule of Law creature, but that's not legal on Magic Online just yet. Stony Silence is actually a card that I debated a little bit with Kataki. And I actually prefer Stony Silence, even though Aether Vial is shut off by Stony Silence as well. In the matchups where Stony Silence is good, it is so good that it's worth shutting off your Aether Vials entirely, and Kataki is frequently not actually quite impactful enough. Creeping Corrosion sort of shores that up a little bit more. Choke is one of my favorite cards in Modern, just kind of shuts people down. Then a couple one-ofs here. Sundering Growth, a removal spell against both Affinity and against Boggles, along with the Pride Mage here. These are some questionable slots, I think. Teague I like a lot, actually, against Pod in particular. And then sort of War and Peace is a sort of generally good card against a lot of decks where you just need to hit a little harder. One of the weaknesses of this deck is the individual card power level is actually quite low compared to a lot of decks. You're playing stuff like 2 casting cost 2/2s, and many of your opponents are playing Tarmogoyfs, and or they're playing Lightning Bolts and such. And sort of War and Peace helps your little weaker creatures, even things that are like left behind, like Blade Splicer when your artifact tokens are gone. Things like that actually deal damage. I'm not sure it's the best. I've actually also been kind of considering Ajani, the new Ajani, as a possible card for some of those matchups as well. So a lot of things to explore, but just wanted to get a general feel for the deck overall, because it's one of the things that I'm considering playing in the Grand Prix. I think that the major decks to focus on are still Pod, Twin, and Affinity. I think they're still really the sort of triumvirate of the three top decks. I don't necessarily like this deck against Affinity, but I think it has tools against the others. I think Aether Vial is quite good against Twin, lets you actually play a game where you're not necessarily tapping up for threats. And then you have some effective sideboard cards there too, like Choke. But anyway, just wanted to give this a shot, see how it goes, and we're going to do exactly that. So here we go.